Senator from Indiana.
Mr. President, there has been a great deal of confusion over what's been happening here this week. I know Hoosiers want a clear explanation, and so I would like to take just a moment to explain exactly where I stand on the issue before us. Let me start by laying out a few facts. This is the reality that we face. Fact number one, every single Republican opposes Obamacare and wants to see it repealed and defunded. That is unassailable. We're all together on that. Second, the House has sent us a bill that would defund Obamacare while keeping the rest of the government running. I supported that bill, and I think we all support that bill. Third, Senate Democrats are united in their opposition to repealing Obamacare, and unfortunately, unfortunately from our standpoint, the fact is they control the Senate, and they control the White House, and we don't have the votes to prevail. So now the confusion sets in, because let's face it, we have a lot of confusing procedures here in the United States Senate. But I have always been guided by the principle that to the extent possible, a yes should be yes and a no should be no on the issue itself. We have all these procedural motions here, and members like to attach that, well, this is what it means if you vote to go forward, or this is what it means if you don't vote to go forward. And it's so easy to run home and say, oh, well, no, on the issue politically, that was procedural, so don't pay any attention to that. Sometimes you have no other option, because the majority leader won't allow any votes on the issue itself. In this case, the majority leader has allowed that vote. That is not the case here. So we don't need a procedural vote to determine whether you're for or against Obamacare. We will be able to have a vote if we invoke cloture and move forward and keep this alive for continued debate, not just this week, but next year and however long it takes to deal with this issue. We need to move forward or everything else comes to a standstill. That is why I will be voting to move forward. I will be voting to keep this process alive. Otherwise, everything stops. There is no further action on this. The House of Representatives, controlled by our party, is waiting for us to send this bill back. If we deny cloture, it doesn't go back. They don't have an opportunity to go to the next step. There is bipartisan support for a bill that I have introduced in the Senate, and Todd Young, a congressman from Southern Indiana, has not only introduced but passed in the House of Representatives to delay this process for a year so we can continue to address and hopefully repeal Obamacare. The President delayed for business, just again today for small business. He can delay for individuals, and that will give us time to continue this effort. Voting for cloture today so that we can get something back to the House is not a vote against Obamacare or for Obamacare. It's exactly the opposite. It's against Obamacare. It keeps the process alive. Saying otherwise is misleading, and if that was the case, then the procedural vote that we had on Wednesday would not have been 100-0. So those who try to define this as a procedural vote are essentially stopping the process from going forward and stopping the government from running. It affects military families, it affects veterans, it affects hundreds, if not, well, thousands and thousands of people in critical jobs. It affects people all across my particular state. Sometimes, if you achieve the goal, the problem is this doesn't achieve the goal. We all know that Obamacare has a major proportion of it is funded through mandatory funding, and that is not what we're doing here. We can only affect the appropriations, the discretionary funding, less than 50%. If it achieves the goal, and ultimately we have to do this, but if it achieves the goal, then it probably may be worth considering. But if it doesn't achieve the goal, let's keep this process alive. And let's all of us be on the record with our yes or our no. Let's get this bill back to the House so we can continue the fight, and let's be straight up on where we stand on this issue. Not through a procedural vote, but through a clear yes and no. The American people deserve no less. I commend the passion of my colleagues talking on the floor, trying to get rid of Obamacare. We have a difference of opinion as to how tactically we can address this best. I've come to the judgment and conclusion that I think many are coming to, that instead of just stopping everything, being at a total impasse, shutting down the government, and even if we were successful, it wouldn't address the full shutdown and defunding of Obamacare. I've come to the judgment and best conclusion that we ought to move forward. Our House Republican members are waiting for us to send them legislation, that we can keep this going and come to hopefully a much better resolution than just simply using a procedural gimmick, a procedural process here to define where we stand on this issue. I take a backseat to no one on where I stand on Obamacare, and I will not give up the fight until we achieve the goal. Mr. President, I yield any time I may have left.